Good evening, everyone. Before we get started on tonight's show, there is something that I would just like to kind of say. I feel like I need to kind of get off my chest because it's something that has affected a lot of us in this space, and I think is I have to be very clear about our position going forward. I know these times are scary for everyone, even more so for those of you who are living over in the States. I've more than made my feelings known on various social media outlets, but I thought it would be sort of best to address it live. There is no excuse or justification for the decision that has been made this week in American politics. It is a decision that has put your country back half a century. This brand is an extension of myself. It's an extension of Atlas, of Justin, of all our collaborators and supporters. And as such, we will forever stand against intolerance, cruelty, oppression, and willful ignorance. And that is all I wanted to say. And if our guest tonight, or Atlas, you would like to add to that, please feel free.
I think that everyone knows where I stand with any belief. And when I say that roll well and be kind, that's across the board. And you stated it perfectly. Intolerance and cruelty will not be tolerated. So, but that being said, hi, Paul. Glad you're here today.
All right. So
I don't have any statement other than like I'm just still incredibly depressed. So like I'm still working my way through like that kind of stuff. It's just like, I'm just depressed. It's hurtful and shameful and all those things. So, maybe I could come up with better words or something, but it's just hard to dig yourself out of it, So
it is. And I agree with you 100%. Like, I've been quiet on social media, and a lot of people have actually approached me and they're like, are you quiet because you have a controversial stance? I'm like, I'm quiet because I have a lot of feelings.
Yeah,
I'm trying to sort through them. Let me do that. But one of those ways that we do that is through gaming.
Speaking of which, welcome everybody to Too Legit to Crit, a tabletop role-playing podcast made for people who are righteously bodacious, tubular, and not in the least grody to the max. Tonight we've got a very special guest, and you will see the 80s connection soon enough, where we have Paul from Tablecat Games. Thanks for joining us, my man.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. I've been wanting to kind of get you on the show for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you come out with yet another product. It's like, holy shit, this has got to happen now. So, do you want to just quickly tell us about yourself before we get into absolutely abusing you with questions?
All right. There's not much to say about me. I'm just kind of a boring nerd guy that has like weird obsessions. And in order to get like through difficult times, I started making games, and we're going to keep making games because things keep getting more difficult. So it's
good job, security.
Yeah. So yeah, it just basically like I've been playing for a while, not as long, RPGs for a while, not as long as other people. I've been writing for a long time. And then eventually around 2020 is when I started getting serious about like wanting to make something to release it during the time of the pandemic. So that's how I ended up in this space, is just, 2020 was like, I got to release this thing that's in my head, and make a game, and hopefully people want to, play it or read it at least. And so far so good. So that's where I'm at right now.
So if you don't mind us kind of going like back to the beginning, how did it start in tabletop role-playing games for you?
Well, okay, see, it goes back to the 90s. This is funny. It's basically a bunch of false starts. So I was big into Star Wars, like super huge. And it's hard to tell people that like at a time there was like nothing Star Wars. After Return of the Jedi, it was like nothing, except there were some books here and there. And then the role-playing game came out. And that was an outlet to like pick up books that talked about Star Wars and behind the scenes stuff. And they came up with all this like lore and all this fun stuff. And so I would pick those up and I'd want to play it. But because at that time, if you didn't know anybody that played role-playing games, you'd have to figure it out yourself. And I tried a couple times and it just didn't feel right. It didn't make sense. I didn't know what I was doing. There was no YouTube to watch people playing to be like, oh, that's how it works. So it was all these like false starts to get it going. I ended up dropping it. And then much later, we're talking around 2009, it's quite a ways later, I ended up getting into a Star Wars group, and that allowed me to experience the game from a player angle. And we played regularly for a couple years. And then when that group died, I took up the mantle and ran a few Star Wars games. And then I've run Star Wars, a couple systems worth, and then Ghostbusters. And then I did D&D for a little while.
Ghostbusters game? Hang on, to pause.
I know.
What?
I am now learning there's a ghost. Can we just talk about the Ghostbusters game?
Yeah, it came out in the 80s too. It came out before Star Wars. It uses a D6 system that is, you could consider it rules light these days, because it was actually hard for me to run it at first. And this is why I argue that sometimes like rules light is hard for new people, because there's less guidelines. So you'd be like looking at the rules and it's, well, there's this thing called brownie points that act as like your health, and you can use it to add die and all these other things. And it just was, I don't know, I'd be like, well, how much damage does an axe do? And it'd be like, I don't know, 3 brownie points, you know. So it's just like, if it doesn't state it, sometimes it's hard for people to like just realize, hey, you can make things up and just keep rolling with it. So that was a valuable lesson for me.
I think that is a very valid point, and it's one that I've never really considered before. For someone that hasn't played tabletop role-playing games, coming in and playing like the equivalent today would be a PBTA game, where it's like, just kind of wing it. It's like, what do I wing? How do I wing this?
Yeah.
You know, what guidelines do I have? So that is a really valid point, and I'd never really considered it.
Maybe
before.
it doesn't apply to everyone, but it certainly applied to me. And I'm not a huge fan of D&D. I'm not super anti D&D. I prefer not to run it ever again. And I do think it's way more complex than it should be for new people, especially the magic system and stuff.
I will never play Wizard ever in any system because of D&D.
I feel like if you had a party of newbies and they're all like martial classes or something, it'd just be so like nobody's casting many spells. It'd be so much easier to run.
I mean,
a game like that now.
I agree, because I've never bought into the myth, because there was always the myth of D&D is great for new players. It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's the GM, you know, it takes a lot of the onus of that. So it isn't D&D isn't necessarily a simple, straightforward system, because it has a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
Especially when you get into like the core mechanics of the system of casting spells and whatnot. And I come from a Pathfinder background, so you know, I can't really talk about complication.
Like
a Ghostbusters sound.
What the?
I want to investigate that.
I know. I was like, "Where's Google? Where's my phone?"
It's been out of print for decades, and you can get pretty much anything from it you want for free PDF, because it's just out of print. I mean, it's sort of piracy. I don't condone it, but I don't think the company that made it exists anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
And used copies go for a lot. There's this thing called a ghost die with the Ghostbuster symbol on it that's worth a lot of money. I have like repros of it, so you know, there's ways of running it online with just using dice and stuff. So you could easily do it if you wanted to.
What I'm hearing is there's a gap in the market.
Yeah.
For a brand new Ghostbusters game, as long as we can get the licensing.
Yeah, let's just all buy that IP for thousands and thousands of dollars.
Who owns it now? Who's got it? Is it?
Let's find it. Hunt them down.
Is it Touchstone? No, is it Sony? Sony, I think, own it.
Yeah. There's board games right now. It's just it hasn't been an official one. And there's fan conversions of different systems and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so Ghostbusters, you play a little bit of D&D, then where'd you go?
Then I started making my own RPG, and it was called Operation Wolfpack. And that was a D6 open D6 system. That's the Star Wars, like the system I knew the most.
Yeah.
And that, I ran it for a while. I wrote the whole book, and then it died. Because once I reached a certain power level where you end up with, your players have so many D6 in their skills. You're rolling like D6, and that might seem fun, but it's hard. You got to do all this math. It just kind of scaled up weird, and it just wasn't satisfying to me anymore. And I didn't know what I was doing with layout. It was just a lot of excuses, but it died. And I had friends that would encourage me to keep going, but it was like my friend Chris Pierce was just always kind of like, "Hey, what about that game? Like every once in a while, just kind of keeping that little pilot light on." Then the pandemic hit, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do this thing, but I'm gonna do it in a different system." I started looking around, what's available, what do I like. I eventually fell on Savage Worlds, which is kind of a mid-crunch system. It's fast, furious, fun is their motto, and they had a license for making games under their banner, essentially. And so the problem is Operation Wolfpack was kind of a G.I. Joe ripoff. See, I got G.I. Joe stuff up here.
I did. I saw that. I was like, ooh, that's one of those like moments that's going, wait a minute,
Yeah.
is that?
And there was already a G.I. Joe type system in Savage Worlds that was done by one of their licensees. So my friend Jason Ho was like, he's an artist. He was helping me he was doing some of the art direction and stuff. As I was working on it, he said, well, why don't you lean into the synthwave look and aesthetic more? That's when it really clicked on me, as this game could be like Miami Vice or these type cop shows with the cool colors, and there's no music in the book, but play music while you're playing.
We could fix that.
Yeah, you're gonna open up the book and it opens like one of those Hallmark cards.
Yeah,
it's a great idea.
Or like the you remember the kids books you used to get, or it's hardcover, and then there's like buttons you can push
on the side.
Yes,
I'll have to look into that. Yeah. I'm sure it's very cheap to do. So, but anyway, so then I rewrote so Wolfpack became like, that game is kind of like a prequel to Street Wolves, where Wolfpack in the lore essentially is doing G.I. Joe type junk, and then there's a big thing and they're essentially wiped out, and the bad guys go underground and kind of win. The players are playing a group of basically like freelance agents that work for Wolfpack, like the remainder of it, like underground kind of thing. They're forced to like work in the shadows, in the darkness, and that kind of stuff. So that's how that came about. I don't know, what was the question? I just rambled on for 20 minutes.
No, we are a rambling show. We're the rambling men.
Yeah, no. we ramble, we go off tangent, don't worry about it.
So the birth of Street Wolves is almost like a long time coming then.
It was multi-years, like it took like 4 years to write and release the book essentially. But prior to that, there was a whole different book, so it was just kind of lingering out there for a really long time.
I like that. That's cool. I like that, the amount of dedication that probably took. There it is.
Yeah,
that's so pretty. It's so pretty.
So was Street Wolves your first game under Tabletcat?
Yes. So what happened is I was silly, and I did the thing you're not supposed to do as a creator. As I said, I'll just make a big giant thing as my first thing. And it was everything you don't want to do. But the first thing I actually released was a jump start, which was like the skim down rules, which it's shorter and more digestible. And that was kind of like the first release, and that gave me some experience, like at least with the layout and all that kind of stuff. Then I kept working on the book, and then I released the book, and then I ended up redoing a bunch of the layout. So that's
so cool.
I mean, this is the one that I've been obsessed with for a while, because I'm an 80s baby, and this fucking speaks to me on a level that is incomprehensible. I just think everything about it looks fantastic. So tell us about it. Tell us about the game. Tell us about, what it's about, what the main resolution mechanic is. Just, I want to learn more about Street Wolves.
Well, like I said, it's a Savage Worlds game. So Savage Worlds, like I can't publish their rules in my book. It's basically like my book is like a companion piece to Savage Worlds. There's a bunch of different settings. What I always say is like once you get Savage Worlds, it opens up a ton of other fun settings like Titan Effect and Deadlands and all these other Battle Lords does a version. And their core things are, I don't know how much I want to get into this, but one is your skills are based on a die type. So if you have like a little bit of skill in something, it's a D4. And if you have a ton of skill in something, it's a D12. So it's all the steps in between. And you're trying to beat a 4 generally as the target number. So you could see beating a 4 on a 4-sided die is tough, like meeting or beating. So if you have like an 8-sided die, it's easier. So that's a thing. Then there's these edges and hindrances. It's a classless system, so it's not like you pick like detective and you're forced along this path. It's I want to make a detective that is good at sneaking and these, but also good at shooting or whatever. And so you pick your skills, but then you also pick your edges, which the edges help you do different things. Like you can get a higher notice, when you're looking around. You can be better at XY. Edges really help define your character. Even though there's not like a ton of skills, those edges really break you. You could be like an acrobat or all that kind of stuff. And there are also these things called hindrances, which things you're not great at, things that set you back. There's a whole ton of them. In Street Wolves, there's things like computer illiterate, right? Like this is a burgeoning world with computers now, and if you're computer illiterate, you can't get the clue out of there or whatever. There's also thematic things like Forgotten Past, which is I ripped off of Titan Effect, another setting, but with permission, because
Yeah.
we work with it. But that's more like, you have amnesia, that old plot trope, the detective doesn't know his past, that kind of thing. So, and there's tons more I could go into. I don't know where you want me to go with this.
Wherever
but
you want to go.
Wherever. I mean, we want to learn about you. We want to learn about your product and
I
your
do
games.
have a very important question that might be the most
Okay.
important question of the show. Where did the name Tablecat Games come from?
We would play games, and the cats would jump up on the table.
My God.
And then we would say they were a table cat. And that's it. I like cats. It's not
You're
very
great,
deep.
Paul. No, I love it. That's like
Okay.
the best. That's the best ever. Seriously,
Well,
I love it.
just to jump ahead, my next thing that's coming is Monster Truckers, just temporarily. And the idea behind that is, what if you were a monster that drove a semi-truck? So this
I
is where
love
my
it.
ideas come from. They're super on the
That's great,
surface.
though. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be super deep and like politically, like entrancing. I love the simple stuff. Sometimes the simple stuff is like the best thing ever. Because when I pulled up your website for the first time, like months ago, right, and I saw these cats, I saw you and cats, and I'm like, are all the games cat themed? They're not, by the way. Anyone listening or
I
wants
have
to
no
investigate, they're
cat
not.
games.
There's no cat
Yeah.
games. Although unless there might be a cat monster.
Do you think a cat game is going to be your like magnum opus?
No,
Do you think a cat game is like, okay, now's the time. I've had practice. Now I'm going to make the cat game.
I think at some
cat
point I
games.
might just have a super, super simple game like that I might give away for free, or something like that, where it's
Yeah.
just a one sheet or something.
Yeah.
That's where I may end up.
What kind of cat breed are you? Are you
Something,
like a house cat, outside cat?
Don't give all these ideas away for free. You wanna
Fair.
take this offline.
Yeah, you guys.
I'll send you an email later.
You guys should get together on this and come out with this.
Listen, you're the one that wanted to do a Bluey game.
Because Blue's fucking awesome.
Sure.
I mean,
I don't have kids. I'll take your word for it.
you don't need to have kids to enjoy Bluey.
So I have been told. Do you watch Bluey, Paul?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, see, me and Paul, we're on the same boat today. We got this.
That's it. I mean, once you start, you'll never stop. My kids will be 18. I'll still be going. Do you guys want to watch Bluey?
That doesn't surprise me. I'm totally for it too. That's great. That's great. But I do love the entire vibe of your website. It fits your material, like very much so. Like, is this, I just am curious, like as a creative, I'm not a creator, but as a creative mind, like when you think about games, do they tend to be all kind of that synth vibe, that futuristic vibe? Because I do know, we've talked about it before, The Wicked Forever King Hungers very clearly is not. Like, where did that come from? Like, where in the recesses of your mind did that, like...
Okay, so yeah, well, the one of the points, the thing is like I'm trying to do some games where like I have Street Wolves and it's really big, a big job production,
right?
And then I want to do like little games or littler games to get these other aesthetics out to prove that I'm not just the synthwave guy or just the Savage Worlds guy, and also it's good to practice the different design styles so I can grow, right?
Absolutely.
As a layout person and all that kind of stuff. So Wicked Forever King Hungers actually comes, I was listening to, I think it was an NPR story about some pope or something that drank blood, or it was some crazy story. It was a real historical thing. And then that kind of was like, well, what if, like you were trying to stop an evil king or something from feeding on the blood of children or something, like that. And so that's where this kind of came from, where it's a cyclical game, essentially. It's more meant for one-shots where you play as some heretics who have to stop the king from feeding, because he has like these millennia-long slumbers, and when he awakens, he hungers, and if he feeds, there's like an apocalypse type thing happens. So the heretics want to stop that from happening. And if they don't, the apocalypse happens and then some horrible thing happens. And so I have these, and it's based on lasers and feelings. So it's super, super rules light. In mine, it's brutality and guile are the two traits.
Love
and
that.
Everything results if through those you roll up, over or under. It's been a while since I looked at my own book, so I can't get too specific right now.
That's okay.
But there's an adventure generator where essentially it tells you, like, the king awakens, he hungers for this, then to stop him, you have to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like, and then there's like there's like tables to help create a heretic. There's a lot of tables to just kind of like, what I really liked about this is when I was running it and playtesting and all that stuff, is it was really easy to just get something going and then just improv your way through a session, as long as you had those things that you could hit, those major things that you wanted to, like you could generate locations and monsters and all that kind of stuff.
I remember when I first covered this game, like way back. Well, not way back, but it feels like way back. It's been a long year, y'all. But when I first talked about, oh my god! But that is one of the things that appealed me to this game, is that appealed to me to this.
Yeah,
something
you're doing well.
Peeled.
You're doing
something
well
got
so far.
Peeled. Yeah, but I have a lot of non gamer friends back where I come from. And they always were like, oh, I want to try gaming. But then I tried to get them into it, and it was just a flat shutdown every time. And this one, I was talking about it, and I was reading and talking about it on the show. I had a couple of them actually like ping me and message me going like, we would play that. Like, this looks appealing as like a sit down play it for the first time. I know we just talked about like, first timers not liking the rules light stuff, but I'm not a first timer GM, but I could bring in players that have played before, because this was very appealing to them. They were like, oh yeah, no, like we could sit down in one session and just have a real fun night. And I still like, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna surprise some friends and just be like, hey, guess what? Let's go.
Yeah, as long as you're fine with yes-anding and all that kind of like,
right.
Just kind of going along and listening to what they're saying and then building on all that stuff as you play it. Like, I used to be terrible as a GM where I have notes and notes. If they do this and then do this, it was so bad. It was like a crutch for so long. Right now, I'm kind of more, well, like with my Street Wolves adventures, I'm more like a node-based adventure guy where you can go to these different nodes and there's clues that point here and there, but it's kind of like it's not as static where like, this, you need to do this, and then I'd write like dialogue. Insane stuff.
My gosh.
But you could
That's so
see,
much work.
yeah, but you could see like how far I've come since then, because now it's just like I could run Forever
Right.
King and just go, oh yeah, and then you find this tower, and then you ask them what rumors have you heard about this place, and then they'll say something, and you'd be like, yeah, because that's true. That evil creature is
That's
in this place.
fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm gonna use that.
yeah. That's all you gotta do is you just ask
like that.
them for input, and then steal it.
Yeah. I mean,
Great.
I was very much like you. I was very much a heavy prep sort of GM, where it'd be okay. This is what I want my players to do. This is, these are the things that I'm expecting them to do. All right. If faced with this choice, they're either going to go A or they're going to go B, and then I would prepare for both those scenarios. Nowadays, I'm a lot more improvisational. I've got a rough idea, and it's the sort of thing, like you said, it's all yes-anding. And a lot of times, okay, so you guys enter a tavern. Okay, what's the name of the tavern? What does it look like? You tell me how you're envisioning this.
Love that.
And then I can kind of go off that. What does it look like? Is it busy? What does the bartender look like? And I will just feed off off what my players kind of see.
For me, like most games that I run, so I run a lot of Delta Green and a lot of Street Wolves. Like primarily, there's my two favorite games to run, and I am a little more static with my choices for that. So like Street Wolves, I like to have a lot of like pot boilers or suspenseful things where things build up, and then there's actual clues, and I build in all these clues and all this kind of stuff. So I'm not as this one's gonna sound bad, but I'm not as open to like oh interpretation that changes that overall like plots. Like I don't know how to describe it, but I am open to like changing it based on their actions. So if you go here, there, or whatever, that's fine. You can go wherever you want. You can talk to whoever you want, and the ending may be completely. I don't have an ending in mind, right? Like I just have all the setups and the steps to like my idea is the bad guys are doing this thing, and if the players don't do anything about it, they'll either keep doing this thing or this bad thing will happen.
Yep. Yes,
right? And
100%.
And the fun thing for me is finding out how the players alter that. Do they fail and the bad guys win? Like there's different degrees of success for the bad guys sometimes. Sometimes they just crush the bad guys and then it's all over. That's fine. But for games like Forever King, I'm way more into like changing the entire story as we go, right? Because it's more of an adventure. It's more of like an open-ended thing.
Yeah. I love that.
Because you did mention Delta Green, I'm a huge fan of Delta Green.
I saw John's like whoop radar go off like, oh,
I got it perked up like a fucking meerkat at that
Yeah,
point.
he does.
But yes, because Delta Green, like their operations are written as basic information. So there is this information, this NPC, this is his backstory, this is the information that he knows in regards to the operation. So those are the points that I will keep static, and whether that's in Delta Green or even in Pathfinder when I run that, those are the things that static. Everything else, anything that doesn't equate directly to the operation, that is all subject to change.
Yeah. And I like how they'll do like a timeline. There's a lot of things I've cribbed from Delta Green for Street Wolves where sometimes there's like, here's the timeline of the events previous to the players stepping on the scene. That's so helpful me as a GM is what, if they ask me, well, what happened 3 days ago? I can go, oh, 3 days ago, this thing happened.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. And then sometimes there's like a timeline of events, like if they don't intercede.
Yeah.
So then you kind of get an idea of like where the bad guys are going. But as far as like other stuff that I've cribbed from Delta Green is I love their bonds. So in Street Wolves, there's relationships. I love their home scenes. And so in Street Wolves, there's leave, because I love the idea of having like a thing that's built into the game where who are the people at home that you're trying to help, or sometimes your rivals or whatever. And how do you interact with them when the mission's over? A lot of even Savage Worlds has downtime mechanics, but sometimes it's about like carousing, going to bars and these other things. And more like the leave was built more to try to, what is your agent doing with friends and family? Or, sometimes they have to go to therapy because they've seen some screwed up stuff, or, like how do they handle life outside the mission?
Yeah, I love that about Delta Green. The having relationships as a mechanic is something I'm seeing more and more in many games. The one obviously I'm more familiar with is Delta Green with their bond system. But we did it in Monster Hearts where you've got they call them strings, where you've got ties to other characters. And I do like the fact that these are mechanically relevant aspects of your character,
Yeah.
which help flesh out and give your character depth. So what your character does when they're not on mission helps inform us what your character is like. And I think that that's huge. And I'm definitely glad that it's in Street Wolves.
I'll give you an example as one of my players has this really deep family relationship stuff fleshed out where she even has this hindrance called overbearing relationship where her mom is really involved in her life and wants to know what's going on and stuff. So, I can, if I want to, go, while you're on the mission, you got 50 answering machine messages from your mom. She's freaking out, stuff like that. So, it just kind of like you could even have relationships. And that's one thing I wanted from Miami Vice was, the detectives will be doing whatever. And then somebody from their past shows up or, they're a relative or the ex-wife calls about, something, so I wanted to bring that kind of personal thing into their lives rather than just being adventurers in a dungeon killing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought it was weird when I first was introduced to relational mechanics or bonds or whatever you want to call them. I thought it was weird because for me, it was like, okay, we're all playing a game together. We're all role playing together. Like, duh, our characters should have relationships together, like, have like whatever. But the first time that it hit me is like, oh, I get it. I was playing, what was I playing? Was it Mutants Masterminds? Probably. Is either that or Fading Suns. But either way, I wanted to do something with my character that mechanically she would not be able to do, except I was like, hey, but with so and so's help, because like we are like twin. It's Fading Suns. Since we were like siblings, it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, we should be able to pull this off because we know each other so well. After that session, I was like, yeah, there should definitely be like teamwork mechanics or some sort of bonding mechanic. And ever since then, when I see that in a game, I'm kind of like, oh, like, yeah, I get really hyped for it. So I'm going, okay, what can I do? Like, how can we work together in this? And I think it's a really interesting way to build community within your table too, because it's kind of like, it helps build the story more, which you guys touched on a little bit with the whole players get to pick where they go situation. I'm a big believer, and I push the living, breathing worlds. Like that's my biggest thing when playing a game is like your world should be alive. Like it should feel like you're like things are happening around your characters and your players. And I think that the bonding mechanics, the relational mechanics, help with that because it makes everything feel more real, more relatable, more like, oh yeah, like when you're like 50 missed calls from your mom, I always kind of made that face like, yep, been there. Like that's so relatable. Like I get that. So I love that. That's so cool. I love that it's in Street Wolves. I'm here for it.
Good.
Are you gonna make more Street Wolves? Are there gonna be expansions? Are you done? Like what's the game plan? Are you focusing more on the monsters and trucks now? Like
well, so what I'm trying to kind of do is an every other thing where I do a smaller type game, then go back to do like a Street Wolves thing. So right now I am focusing on monster truckers, but in the future for Street Wolves, I have a list here. Let me look at my secret list just so.
Oh,
is this an
they're
exclusive?
good stuff.
Well, okay, so I would like to do Archetypes Volume 2. So Archetypes is just like characters that you can use. And so we have 13 out there right now. I'd like to do another 13. There is a book that's coming out of the Kickstarter called Dead Hand, which is a campaign essentially. That's written by somebody else. Vince, I don't know, plug for Mayday Roleplay. He's a part of that. Vince is going to be doing Dead Hand, and I'll be doing the layout and all this stuff. So that's coming out next year. One thing I'm probably going to do is a adventure that probably will have to kickstart. So what I'd like to do is kind of make it like an adventure album of so many adventures with the single, the star one being a Heart of Glass. Heart of Glass is an adventure that takes the street wolves out of the city and puts them in a small town, and it's a sandboxy mystery, trying to figure out what's going on, who can we trust, kind of a thing. And it features some satanic panic because this is the
It's
80s.
the 80s.
And so I've run it all the way through twice. Super, super fun. I loved every second of it. I just haven't been able to finish it. Okay, so it has this component. Here's what makes it a little special too. It has this component where the characters find these audio tapes of like essentially a journal as they go to kind of provide some clues and insights on the situation. Well, I am partnering with Megan Caves of Gone Rogue Entertainment, who's a talented actress, and she was we're gonna like make the audio parts so
cool.
you can play them
That's so
for people.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Feel bad for my players that I've run in the game for, because I've had to read the lines and I'm not an actor.
Instead of a professional actor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you didn't get to hear the hiss and pop of the tape and those noises. It's just me going, you find the tape that says blah, blah. It's boring. But
please tell me you did like hiss, pop, hiss,
no,
pop.
no. Maybe next run through. I will have to test it again. So
you should.
I offer myself as tribute.
Yes, I had to do a rifle sound for one of my games, and I cannot do that with my mouth. Like, for some reason, that is one special effect I cannot do. So I did it, and my players were like, "What was that?" It's like, "Yes, the sound of a gun going off." I'm like, "No, it wasn't." And then Connell, one of our viewers, meow, kind of, to be honest, it was close. He did the sound, so I was like, "Yeah, that." So then throughout the rest of the game, whenever a rifle was shot, I just pointed at him, and he,
I have a thing called the loopback, which it's for Macs, where you can run sound effects. So I don't always have the sound effects, but I do have a good assortment of Delta Green stuff. So when I run that,
someone's soul slowly dying.
With Street Wolves, the ones I use the most are like phone ringing or like the old because the Street Wolves technology is a little bit ahead. So I have an old cell phone beeping. I also have the modem
great
noise ready to go.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So yeah,
that's smart. That's good. I like implementing technology with my games. I ran a one-shot horror game like years and years and years ago, and I don't even remember where I found it, but Spotify had some songs / like ambient something from It, like Pennywise. So it was like sewage dripping and like a kid giggling. My players never forgave me for that. They're like, no, like, no, you're never allowed to run a game like this again. I'm like, okay.
I was running Impossible Landscapes, and there's one like very early on in the adventure when the agents are getting their briefing. You pick an agent who, I'm not going to say why you pick them because it's a bit of a spoiler for the campaign. But you pick an agent, and that agent basically sees a dancing clown. So I managed to get a picture of the most creepy fucking looking clown ever.
Nice.
And it wouldn't work on the big screen. I was trying to post it to Chris's big screen, and one of the players was like, "Sorry, it's cool. Don't need to see it." So it's just, it's a fucking clown. That's all I need to know. Don't need to see the fucking thing.
No, and go ahead. No. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's one last planned thing for Street Wolves that is planned for sure, but it'll probably take several years to get to. Is the big expansion called Street Wolves Malibu, which would be a West Coast and be more fun. Like Street Wolves is a little bit more serious, but it would be more fun in the sun and surf adventures in Hollywood. Like that kind of different West Coast vibe, as opposed to like the East Coast Miami Vice type.
You've basically done your version of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
Vice City.
Yeah, where you just set it in a different location.
That's amazing.
So I've got a few plans for it. I've got stuff written out. I actually have an adventure for it that I ran once, but it's one of those things where it's like I got to finish all these other things first.
Yeah. But speaking of things that you're not finishing, sorry, Sam just posted a question in chat for you.
Okay.
And she wanted to know, what sort of concepts are you thinking about for your monster truckers? And I don't know if that was spurred on by the Pennywise comment, but that's a very good question. Like, what kind of monsters are you talking about?
So Monster Truckers is a mix of the aesthetics sort of like the early 80s, late 70s semi-truck craze. Like, look it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With more classic monster types. So, we're talking your Wolfman, your Frankenstein, your Dracula.
Yeah.
That kind of group, Gill Person, and I think Ghost are all going to make it. And
that's awesome.
The inspiration behind it is essentially like kind of a mix of Road Warrior. So the first Mad Max movie where society's kind of fallen apart, not where it's all crazy Doof Warrior and that kind of stuff. It's more like just things are not great. The past stuff of Adventure Time. So the post Mushroom War. I don't know if you're familiar with Adventure Time, but it's that society collapsed part of Adventure Time. Trucking movies, Damnation Alley. You guys probably never heard of that one. And then like rockabilly and old country music. And
love this.
So it's essentially monsters and humans. This is the lore stuff. We're at war. There was a big war. Humans turned to like this technology / magical weapon that basically destroyed the world. So there's one strong human colony left, and the monsters were kind of depowered. They lost a lot of their abilities, and so they've become like a subservient class to humanity. And so they do all the jobs that humans can't do in the real world, like mining and trucking and all these kinds of things.
Oh my gosh.
And so essentially it's like a class thing. And the monster truckers are both truckers and kind of scouts. So they're going out into the world for kind of the first time. There's a lot of lore reasons for all this. I don't want to bog down too much.
Yeah.
They're going out, they're making the deliveries and stuff. They're facing weird creatures. They're helping people, and they're scouting because they're out there and they're trying to make maps and figure out what's out there because they're trying to escape from humanity, essentially.
That's awesome.
It's kind of like, those, I don't know, there's a lot of shows like this in the 80s where you go to town. Like you have a job, but you're going, or you be a drifter, but sometimes you have a job and you're going to town and you're doing these things that are unrelated to your job. But it's kind of how it works. If you're just driving a truck the whole time, it would be a boring game.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I love it because I had just been talking to a friend, I kid you not, before you announced it, about how there's something very wrong with me as a child, which we all know this, but like the amount of girls that wanted to play like Dollhouse and whatever, and I ran around playing X-Men and Mad Max and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I love that concept of that trucker 80s vibe like you were talking about. Like growing up, one of my favorite movies was it was the Killer Truck. I don't remember the name. Was it Road Rage? No.
Duel? Is that the one?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, where it's just a truck. Like there's nobody in it. It's just the truck. Yeah.
Well, that's the one where that guy's being chased, and then there's also the Maximum Overdrive about the trucks that take over and they're in that gas station. Okay.
That's what I'm thinking of. but I mean, you proved my point. There's a lot of movies out there, and I'm for it. I'm so excited. I will be playing this game when it comes out. 100%.
So we're just going to take a quick pause while we say a quick hello to our partners tonight, and then we're going to kind of come back and talk about Monster Truckers in earnest. So first of all, I want to give a big shout out to 13th Moon Games. It's a family-run indie game company out of Wyoming, USA that created the tabletop role-playing game Covenant Crucible. It's a game of modern-day witchcraft. If you can imagine the John Wick movies and the last Witch Hunter movie got together and had a really pretty baby, Covenant Crucible would be it. If you want to learn more and you're interested in joining the official Discord game, check them out at 13thmoongames.com. And more importantly, check out their new release, Covenant Crucible Unbound, because I'm fucking in it.
It's true, he is.
I am an NPC
it is
in
good.
that, and I can't wait to play.
And there's a scenario, right?
Yes, I'm going to get Stefan to run it. I'm not reading the scenario. I'm going to get him to run it because I want to meet myself in game.
And there needs to be some crossover. Our characters need to meet each other.
Yes, definitely.
And we're going to throw Paul in it.
Yeah, we'll just, we'll throw the kitchen sink at it.
That'd be great.
Also, step into a universe where fandoms collide. Welcome to Crossing the Nerdverse, your ultimate portal to all things geeky and glorious. Whether you're into comics, gaming, or sci-fi, we've got you covered. Discover exclusive interviews, epic debates, insider tips, and from your favorite creators. Join the adventure at crossingthenerdverse.com and unleash your inner nerd. Embrace the passion, celebrate the culture, Crossing the Nerdverse, where every fan finds their place. And lastly, check out our merch store where you can find t-shirts, hoodies, desk mats, and other items with our logo or our supernatural inspired waffle-on design or the Moves Like Atlas design. If you want to support us more directly, you can head to our Ko-fi page and make a one-time donation or subscribe to a $3 a month tier, which will give you exclusive Discord access and a mention in our credits. And as always, the best way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button and telling your friends about us.
Stood up to show the shirt, but I don't know if anyone caught it. Literally, the minute stream started and Paul started talking, I took a drink of my drink, and I missed my mouth completely.
Oh.
It's like, act natural, act natural. Like, I still haven't.
I did not catch that, but I'm gonna now look at the recording.
Mhm.
And I just so chill was just like, we're just gonna.
It's gonna be a clip tomorrow. That will be a clip.
Drinking out of a can with a lip ring yet, and I've
Now,
had
the
this
thing
lip ring in
is,
for
you
years.
drink
or
some
not years,
heavy,
but
like sugary shit as well,
this
which
has
is
no sugar
just
in it. No sugar. No sugar. I did good today.
yeah. I wouldn't exactly call it massively healthy though.
I said good. I did good.
So it is a can of Monster. So conveniently, let's talk
But-
about Monster Truckers.
In honor of Paul, it was Ultra Vice guava. It's got like the
Oh.
synthwave
cool.
designs
Yeah.
on it. Yeah, like
Cool.
All right, you got. That segue has layers to it.
so many layers.
Okay, so Monster Truckers. These are monsters that are truckers that are exploring a post-apocalyptic wasteland. First of all, how does one come up with an idea like that? Because I love everything about it.
Well, like I said before, it was one of those things where I wanted monsters to drive semi-trucks, and then
Awesome.
that's it. No, it's kind of like I kind of describe it as like an avalanche of ideas where you come up with a core concept and then you have to
Mhm.
like explain how we get there. So then I come up with certain, like at first it was like, it was actually going to be monster truckers versus UFOs. And then that felt too limiting. But as I came up with things, it kind of snowballs where it's like, oh, okay, well, the monsters were at war and that's why they, whatever, they have to drive the trucks now, and this is what it's just kind of like adding up the things to make the world make sense. There are still UFOs in the game, it's just not
Okay, I was about to
it's not-
say, please
well,
put them back in.
if you look at the preview art, there's a crashed UFO in the background.
I did see that, and I didn't know if that was supposed to be like a joking reference to like Roswell, New Mexico's like deserts, or if
Yeah.
that was like legit in the game.
No, they're in the game. There's all kinds of
My
weird
God.
stuff in the game. Like there's bandits and I actually have an undead highway patrol. There's mutated creatures, things like gremlins, not the gremlins that are copyright, but
right.
the gremlins that
Yeah.
you can use. Just all kinds of weird stuff, and it's basically like Forever King. This is based on a rules light system. It's called Tricube Tales. It's by Zadmar Games. So it is D6 based. It's a little crunchier than Lasers and Feelings, where you have a few more stats, and you get, and like Savage Worlds, as I was explaining earlier, you have where you have edges and hindrances. In this, you have perks and quirks. Your monster will get some perks for different types of perks for being a monster of a certain type, and then you get to pick perks that help define your character, and then you have certain quirks that like your monster might be vulnerable to, I don't know, stakes, let's just say that, and then you get to pick another quirk when you're building characters, and you lean into the quirks to kind of earn some meta currency. You use your perks to help you make rolls, but it's all real kind of loosey-goosey, fast wheeling, fun stuff. So it doesn't really get bogged down in a lot of, crunchy mechanics. You can be your monsters, you can have a battle on the road, or, discover something creepy. It just, it allows for like this really loose, fast storytelling that you don't really necessarily have to like make a lot of notes for or create a lot of plans. So the first adventure that I've already tested, but I'm like testing an actual adventure that I'm going to release with it. It's really super simple, and I'm trying to keep it to just like quick bullet points, and you should be able to like have a good few hours worth of fun just with those bullet points.
It's amazing.
It
I
looks
also
phenomenal.
just noticed the skulls have like 3 eye holes.
Sorry, I need
Fantastic.
to bring that back up.
Yeah, I just noticed that. Like I was so focused on the other stuff when it came up that I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're
Wait a
trying
minute.
to, with the artists, I'm trying to make it, a lot of the art is just kind of subtle or creepy, like,
Yeah.
you know, not like I said, it's not like Mad Max where it's like so over the top. It's more, you know,
Yeah.
just this kind of vibe to it that's something's
It's
not right.
the double take vibe of like, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
is that what is that? That looks so much fun. Like I am a fan of weird and all things bizarre, and like not to the point where it has to be super niche, but this stands out to me because I'm like, I can't even be like, oh, this reminds me of so and so that did so and so. I'm just like, it's monster truckers. And now
Yeah.
there's aliens involved. Like, I am so here for it.
I was surprised somebody didn't think of it first. So like the last year when I came up with the idea, I was worried somebody was just gonna take. You know what I mean? You never know
Yeah.
when something's gonna pop up. So as soon as I put up the backer kit preview page early to collect pre-launch notifications.
Mm-hmm.
Now because I'm trying to do that whole grind, but also it's like, okay, well now the name's reserved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the people know it's out there. Don't do that idea, please.
That always happens. Like you have this amazing creative idea and then it's like you kind of start developing it and then literally it comes out bigger and better or more professionally and I'm like, you know what? I should have put a stamp on it. So I don't blame you at all. I get that. It's like, oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, though, sometimes it's good because, like I was saying with Street Wolves, somebody else had done the GI Joe thing I was going to do,
It's true.
and that forced me to take a new direction. But I don't
It's
really
true.
know how I would have turned Monster Truckers into something I wanted to do that was similar. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah, maybe like alien truckers? I don't know.
I don't.
Like,
Yeah,
don't do alien truckers. This is
I
better.
really
I like
wanted.
this.
I really wanted to be a werewolf driving a semi truck, though. So
Right?
I think a werewolf
love that.
and a vampire that can only do like night journeys.
well, I have that. So as part of the world building was they got like their
Amazing.
abilities got screwed up, so they lost
All
a lot
right.
of their powers. Like vampires, essentially daywalkers. If you don't want a daywalking vampire, that's fine. But it's harder to run games like that. But and then as they level, essentially that's how they get their powers back. You know, so I can't turn into Mist, but you know, 3 adventures later, oh, I have the Mist perk, right? And now I can
That's
turn into Mist.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's
That's
interesting
so
because
cool.
Yeah.
because from the get-go when you pick your trucker you already kind of know, oh, I want to do this, you know, this is where I want to be. Okay, I want to turn into a bat at some point,
Right.
and you know, be able to kind of work towards that and just kind of go, right, you know, how much XP. I mean, I'm assuming there is some mechanic to resolve that, or is it just per adventure?
It's more like gated where you get so far and then it's time for an advance. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those kinds of things. You're not really earning XP in this version. So Tricube Tales is rules light. Zadmar just released Tricube Tactics. So I'm not going to incorporate much of the tactics stuff that's a little more crunchier into this, but you totally could if you wanted to. It's like super simple. It's so like unlike Savage Worlds where I can't reprint the core rules in my game, this I have full permission to put Tricube Tales in here. It's a full game, but then if you're like, oh, I want it a little crunchier, you could go out and get the tactics rules and just alter it a little bit. So,
I love it when systems like take into consideration there's different types of gamers. Like obviously some games and systems are just not going to be for somebody and that's totally cool. Like that's fine. But I do really like it when games almost have it's like video games. I don't know if anybody else in this room is like a big video gamer, but I grew up video gaming. I like that you can pick like story mode, normal, medium, hard, killer. Like I like that option of like, how do I want to play this game? So when systems like tabletop role playing systems do that, where it's kind of like, hey, this is how you can play the game, or I'm all for it because I think that it has a lot of inclusivity that people don't really think about. To be honest.
Well, I'm still testing out a thing which I don't know if it'll make actual release, but so I have right now there's 2 ways to run the game. There's like the traditional RPG way where you just come up with an adventure, you go do whatever and you have fun. Then there's like kind of a quick haul, I call it, where you draw cards and you kind of generate the adventure from the cards. So the first 3 cards are kind of like certain types of scenes, and then if you get a pair or something like that as you go on, then it's like more of a major scene. And so it's a little more chaotic and random that way. It's a little harder to tell a cohesive story sometimes when you're like suddenly there's this big thing. But if you're willing to improv it and try to build some of those scenes earlier, those seeds, they will pay off. Oh, this big scene's happening because you did this thing earlier.
Yeah,
I love
that version only takes like a couple hours, and it doesn't require a lot of prep because I have the types of scenes that you might want to generate. I have creatures or types of obstacles, and then what else? There's also so there's a map making component to this game where I encourage players to draw a little map of where they're going. In the card-based version, you're drawing a card and it actually says road goes left, road goes right, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just there's this alternate version where if I keep testing and it works, then I'll keep it in, and it's just an alternate way to play the game quickly if you just want to do a one shot or something like that.
That's so
I like
cool.
that. I like that. Because a lot of times as a GM, you just, I can't be bothered prepping. I can't be bothered doing this, but I still want to play.
Yeah.
And having that as an alternative of, even if you kind of did a mix, you'd do a few sessions where everything's kind of pre-written and there's an objective, but then you have another session where it's okay, this is how we're going to do it today, and see if what happens informs the story going forward.
Yeah,
I think that's a really cool addition to it, and
I'll show you. I just realized I had this on me. So this is the map my partner drew of the test runs. If you can see, like that's
incredible.
I can't get it to focus.
Did for a hot second.
It did. We got a glimpse of it.
All right. Well, I don't know.
Teaser trailer.
There we go. But yeah. And I don't know if she'll have time, but I was trying to encourage her to do some of these doodles and then actually put them in the sides of the book, like somebody's writing, on the pages.
That's cool.
But we'll see if
that's really cool.
If she has time to do that. Yeah, and then there's also a component that I'm trying out where I encourage people to talk on the CB radio. So if you're like, oh, we encountered danger, I'm like, well, why don't you report it on the CB? Like, hey, all the other truckers, we just fought 50 skeletons. So there's a little bit of reward for that. And one thing I really, really want to do, but depending on if the economy tanks or not, is include in the book a die cut CB, microphone receiver, kind of, the handle thing. I don't know what it's called, where you
thingy,
where you hold it while you hold it as you talk, just to make it feel like a funny prop. But we'll see if that's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, if not, you can always make it a collector's edition and charge another $20 for it.
Well, it all depends on if the tariffs go in. Because printing, doing small batch print runs is possible with places. This is getting into the weeds, but is possible with places like Mixam and stuff. But like for my Street Wolves book, I had to do it overseas. It was the only way that there's nobody in the US that will print. Like, this would have cost me $40, $30 to $40 a print in the US. So I did not go that route.
Man. Yeah.
There's a lot of printers that will just straight up tell you, like, I kind of contacted so many and they're like, we don't do that. There's no way you could afford it if we did, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm crossing my fingers for the future. It may just be PDF only. Who knows?
Yeah, I had a situation like that too. I was probably going to do a Kickstarter of sorts. And before it could even get off the ground, I had some consultations with a bunch of other creators it was a card set, basically. It was a character card set for any game system. And because it was so specific on like the printing and the amounts and everything, everybody was like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
That'll cost you a small fortune if you do it in the States. So I'm like, okay, never mind then.
So does Street Wolves, the core edition, actually have a physical? Do you have it for sale in a physical book anywhere, or is it print on demand?
This is the proof. So this is the one copy that exists right now.
And it's pretty.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I'm looking at it kind of going,
I know. I'm like, those
really
colors. Oh my God.
The Kickstarter funded that. And they are available for pre-order for a very limited time. If you like Google Street Wolves Kickstarter, there's a pre-order button. You can pre-order on BackerKit. And I'm going to shut that down pretty soon because once I get total confirmation that they're like almost here, I'm going to focus entirely on fulfillment because I'm doing it myself to save money.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I can't take in new orders and stuff while I'm trying to
No,
clear
I mean,
300.
understandable.
So, it's still open for a little while yet. And then after that, I'll find venues to. So, I am a Tabletop Bookshelf. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yes, I have.
They are the retail wolf that contributed to the Kickstarter. They're definitely getting a few copies, and then at some point I'll probably sell them on my site, and they might be elsewhere, but I'll point you to Tabletop Bookshelf
All right.
if you miss the pre-order window.
Okay, I'm not getting paid for a couple of weeks, but I'm already kind of signing up.
Yeah, there you go.
Just as we're speaking, I'm signing up to the backer kit. I should have an
There you
account on
go.
BackerKit.
You don't have an account on BackerKit?
I do. That's annoying.
I thought you. Okay, I was about to say, I was like, how do you not? Like,
Yeah, I do. I got an
Okay.
account on BackerKit.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
The amount of games I've signed up like for email notifications in like the last week or so are painful to my paycheck, and I'm like,
Yes,
We'll
I will.
see.
But I will be getting that because
absolutely.
I saw your book when you pulled it. It's like, oh, I want one. I want one of
Yeah, I'll
those.
It's
try to
pretty.
do
It's
the
so
book.
pretty.
Like, these are the page. Oh,
It's a nice size too.
It is a nice size, yeah.
You can't really see it. It's close to
The
the.
format and coloring is gorgeous. Oh,
It's close to the Savage Worlds size. I had a copy of Savage Worlds by me, but I don't now. But I tried to make it as close as possible. It's a little taller though because I got it printed in Eastern Europe, and because they use millimeters versus inches, there's like a little bit of like, well, we can't cut that small.
Yeah.
So it's just a tiny bit. So I'll say it's like a little more powerful than Savage Worlds itself because it's larger.
Hey, I'll take it.
yeah.
I like
it's got
it.
a
I think
little oomph to it.
Yeah.
it looks
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
It does.
thank you.
It really does.
It's very fun to, just as a independent creator, I'll tell you, it's really fun to have your thing in the ideal form that you wanted it in. And I actually use it because I was writing an adventure and I couldn't remember something like a lore thing. So I actually looked it up in my own book, which is weird, but also
Awesome.
very handy. It's like, oh, I can look it up in my book. I don't have to go to the Google Doc anymore.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's
that is
feel
fantastic.
good. Yeah.
Well, I do believe that's pretty much all we've got time for today. It has absolutely flown by. First of all, thanks to everyone who's joined us in the chat. You know, we couldn't do this without you. It's great to see you guys. But Paul, thank you ever so much for joining us today. Now's the time to plug. Tell people how they get involved.
Well, I mean, just go to tablecatgames.com and you can find like everything from there, like Street Wolves, the pre-order stuff, or the Monster Trucker sign up. Like it's just all linked in there. That's what the website's for. Just go there. And I think there's some links to my social media on there too. I don't do Twitter anymore.
Yeah, no.
Speaking about
Good
certain
shout.
things.
Good shout.
Good call out.
Find me on Threads and Blue Sky if you want to talk.
Yeah, Atlas, tell people whereabouts they can find you.
Pretty much Threads and TikTok. Atlas Ursa. Atlas like the Titan, Ursa like the bear. I'm interactive more on Threads, obviously. Instagram too, but Instagram's pretty much all art. So yeah, come hang out.
As for me, you can find me behind all the social media in relation to the show. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads. I'm either at Too Legit to Crit or at natural.juan. If you like what you see and hear, don't hesitate to subscribe, support us in any way you can, even just like tell your friends about us, because that means the world to us. And most of all, I just want to thank everyone for spending time out of their busy day listen to us waffle on about tabletop role-playing games. Thank you very much, and good night.